Well, our New Year's adventures begin in Odessa, Washington, in the first weekend of April of 2024, where we're participating in the Stumpjumpers Desert 100 for I believe this is my 7th year down there, and my son's 4th year, I believe. As we return this year, I would like to highlight that, in fact, I am riding this year. I managed to make it all the way through the pre-ride in the poker rally without breaking anything this year, so that's really a thumbs up to the beginning of the event. We have roughly 922 bikes in the main event here. There was an additional 501 for, I believe, 1,423 total on the track at the same time. This is a point-to-point desert race, 2 laps, 50 miles apiece. That poor fellow there just face planted in pretty hard right at the beginning. You do not want that to happen. Now, to say that the start of this event is chaotic would be an understatement. I don't know if you've ever been in a lineup with close to 1,000 people, have a Civil War cannon be fired, and then blast off across a rock-filled and sagebrush-filled desert. But that pretty much summarizes what's happening. There are people crashing everywhere, and you can't see anything, you can't react to anything. I know in the video that you can see a little bit of the chaos, but it does not portray the amount of kind of zone in you have going here. All you see is going forward. You don't see anything until you watch it in hindsight in the video. Now, one of the changes from the last couple of years is that the weather was virtually perfect on race day. Now that, unfortunately, is contrasted by that when we arrived there on Thursday, it was pouring rain, and then it was snowing, and then it was 0 degrees. And that's pretty much what brought us to about midday Friday. But after that, it cleaned up a lot, and honestly, it was great conditions for the poker run and the race. Now, in interest of authenticity, I try to include a lot of elements ranging from butt cracks to crashes and highlights. Now, there's a real temptation to only include the things that make us look good, but as you can see coming up here that I'm climbing this hill and I missed a gear coming up and kind of stalled out on a relatively easy section because I just couldn't get it back into first, and this guy to the right here stops, and then this poor fellow behind him just about goes over the handlebars trying to avoid him. But that kind of is indicative of how difficult it is in some of these spots. The course is difficult. It's not ridiculously difficult, certainly not to the levels that we hang out in the mountains in. But it's so easy to make mistakes, and this event is a pretty long event. This year for myself and James, it was 5 hours, 23 minutes, and you get fatigued, and you make dumb choices. And there's a few moments of truly highlight material kind of buried in between those, but realistically it's about 5 hours and 19 minutes of dumb and about 4 minutes of awesome. So I guess that kind of brings us to the point of the video, or the point of sharing this. I do make these for my own memories and that I get to watch them in winter and kind of get motivated for the next year. But I think I also like to put out a larger point, see if I can encourage growth in the community. You'll see throughout the race and kind of as we talk that there's people buried everywhere. There's people off to the side, people crash, people buried in mud. So it kind of begs the question of why do we do this if it's so hard on the body and so hard on our machines? And really the answer to that question is pretty simple. Now, many of you don't know me. The only part of my life that I really share socially is my dirt bike riding, which really is just a small piece of my life. But I've been around a few places. My work has taken me to some pretty dangerous environments. So has my general life and some other choices that I've done. Some of the other activities I do also kind of chase the same feeling. But really the reason that I do this is that I'm sitting there Saturday before the race. The race is on Sunday. And I'm constantly asking myself, why do you do this? Because you're feeling beat up. I'm 44, just about to turn 44 years old. My body has been in better condition. I'm doing okay shape-wise, but condition, I've got a few wears and tears on me. But I'm sitting there on Saturday and, feeling a little apprehensive about lining up, especially when I've got my son there with me. And it's like, do you really want to expose him to this danger? But then it dawns on me that I've got butterflies in my stomach. I'm nervous. I'm a little bit scared. I'm excited. I am very competitive at the end of the day, and I know I'm not competitive as far as finishing first, but competitive just to show that I can do this at 44. And that's exactly the reason that I do this. There are so few things in life at this point in your life where you get truly scared, just like a child scared of what you're doing. And yeah, that's a combination of fear and excitement, but honestly, you need to have a few of those in your life. As the analogy goes, like every day wake up and try something that truly terrifies you. Now, I guess the fun element in this is that James, my son here, is racing in the men's event for the first time, the full 100 mile. So for the first time ever, we're competing against each other directly. And we get to experience that fear together, experience the drive and the commitment to this. I also get that through riding with my daughter in our adventure rides, testing her limits. It's been such a positive event to kind of bonding us to be able to share these sorts of things with the kids, and they can see me struggle with the same things that they do, and hopefully, and I'll put a big caveat, and hopefully behave in a more adult and developed, matured way. But either way, I think it's valuable for your kids to see you face the same struggles that they do simultaneously. Now, with the concept of co-opting struggle and facing our fears and our limitations, we'll circle back to that later in the video with something that ended up being quite a special happening in the weekend. But for the time being, we'll comment here a little bit on the race and a little bit of the context for it, since we haven't discussed the changes since the last time that I attempted this event. Now, coming up here in a couple of seconds in the clip, you're going to see me approach this crowd here. I'm not good in open, sharp whoops. Sand whoops, I can ride high speed all day long, but for whatever reason, the hard dirt ones give me a little more difficulty, probably because they're not as evenly spaced. But as I go by these two guys here, passing them on the right, you're going to see that the bike starts to violently buck one way or the other. And I don't know, maybe it looks awesome if you don't know what's going on, but what's going on is a whiskey throttle kind of a situation. Every time I hit one of those whoops, my hand was ripping back, trying to hold on to the bike, and it would grab a mitt full of throttle. Now, my bike, I'm riding a 2014 KTM 350 XCF-W with 55 to 58 horsepower at the wheel. Now, when you grab a fistful of throttle with 58 horsepower, that bike wants to launch. And the entire time that was happening, I was just trying to close the throttle and just kept ripping my hand back. And thankfully, I pulled it out, but just barely. Now, as usual, I put in a caveat about how the camera, it actually does a reasonable, job of displaying speed with our new angle, but it's hard to see the rocks where we are. So I'm going to have another small embarrassment here, as you'll see me shoot off to the right through this sagebrush, because why not? And I just kind of boop into this edge. But what you're going to see here, I'm going to pause the video, is how jagged the rocks are when you really stop and look at them. If you look off to the left there, that's basically what the rest of the course looked like. It is really bumpy. You can't see it in the video. You can see the highlights of the rocks, and as it dries out, you can see a little bit more, but this dirt kicks up on top of them because it's being ripped up by 1,500 bikes going over it. So they kind of cover the base of the rocks, but it's not deep enough that your tires don't get embedded in it. But if you watch my handlebars, they're never sitting still. They're just getting bucked around. That being said, it makes for a super fun, challenging terrain, but you get absolutely just murderated. Your arms hurt so much by the end of the weekend. Like, realistically, race of 5 hours, 23 minutes. We rode another 50, 60 miles in the poker run on Saturday. Friday, we didn't really ride much this year because of the rain, but your arms are absolutely destroyed. I cannot describe that in any fashion for anybody that has not done this. Now, we're going to circle back to one of the ideas I was talking about earlier in this event. You'll notice that the guy on the left, or on the right-hand side there, that he looks a little bit familiar and that he keeps looking at me, and it's not just because I'm good looking. That is my son, James. He, in all rights, he was the first one of us to the pits this year. I think he beat me by somewhere by about 10 to 15 minutes. I turned around a little bit faster in the pits than he did, somewhat because I've learned the mistake of not staying in the pits too long, and this is his first go where he's had to do 2 laps. But during the second lap, about 20 miles in, I caught up with him. He had his helmet off and he was taking a rest. I think he'd gone out a little bit too hard in the first lap, but I had a chat with him and he seemed like he was going to be okay, and he said he was going to get back on his bike and go, so I left, and then probably about 15-20 minutes later he peeled up on me, and then we kind of started to ride together, and then he pulled off again, and I stopped for a second to chat with him, and we just decided that we would ride this out together. Now, the last 30 miles in a 100-mile event, that's a fair chunk of time, but I gotta say that James, he had no quit in him. He kept going. He wanted to finish this, and he absolutely had it in him. Thankfully I was able to provide him a little bit of encouragement, although he would have gone without me. He had it in him. I think he was maybe a little more burnt than he was expecting. I think the youthful enthusiasm maybe came through a little bit too hard. As they say that youthful enthusiasm is no replacement for old age and treachery, and that proved true in this event. We get up to this rock bowl here. I don't know what happened. I think my skid plate got caught on something. It just stopped me dead. I stalled. I did get going right away, but we'll have a quick little chat here with James. But I can't say how proud of I am of him for how he finished. He absolutely aced this event.
What's that?
Didn't see anything.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Last obstacle, let's roll.
Yeah.
We got this.
No, as much as I can say that I provided a little bit of enthusiasm for James, it honestly encouraged me a lot too to keep going. It's hard to go, especially through that 20 to 40 mile mark on the second lap. The last 10 miles, you know you're coming to the end, so you just kind of shoot through. But it was really a lifetime highlight moment for me to be able to do this. And despite such a long event, finding each other halfway through this, I know that we're kind of roughly the same speed, so the odds were reasonable. But I mean, realistically, that's a lot of kilometers to find each other in a tiny little gap. And full marks for him for keeping up with myself and Tim that rides from Saskatoon. He ended up beating us by just over 3 minutes. But the fact that all three of us finished in a 3-minute window for an event that long is pretty amazing. This weekend we were also joined by Devin and his son Oscar, who did the 50-mile event at 11 years old. I haven't seen the results for him yet, but man, he was hauling for the CRF 100 he was on. Unfortunately, his bike had some issues, or his primary bike had some issues, but he really rocked it for his first time go through the desert. I think he had a great time, and hopefully he'll come back next year and really throw himself at it with a full-on race bike. Thomas was also joining us, a friend from Calgary. He joined us for the poker run and really rocked it out for the first time riding out on the dirt. He took my WR 250R dual sport, and he was blasting through the poker alley like nobody's business. So hopefully he can get back into this as well. It was great to have him along and join us in the pits. Here we are coming to the end. Proud moment, right? You know, James crossing out there. I couldn't think of a more textbook ending except for maybe both of us beating Tim, but we'll have to wait till next year for that. So as we close this out, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming along. We do have a little bit of chat at the end, and we'll get to the title of this video. But really, it was just such a great time. The weather could have been better on Thursday, Friday, but then again, we got good conditions as a result. So look forward to trying this again next year. We may see some changes, we may not, I'm not sure. I got lots of ideas going on in my head.
Nice work, bud.
Yeah, thanks.
You killed it. I got all the way to the end.
Definitely killed something.